Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the live stream, guys. 1 second, something is missing. There we go. Now we're all back home, everyone. Welcome, guys. Boy, it has been a crazy week, everybody. There has been so much content. If you are down with UFO stuff, 0-point energy, if you're down with advanced physics, then this has been a week for you. This has been a week for you. So it started on Sunday with the interview with Salvador Pais, which I thought was incredible. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Part 3 should be available anywhere you listen on audio as well. So if you want to drive tomorrow, go to work, or whatever, listen to the audio of in a discussion with Salvador Pais, highly recommend doing that. So there were a lot of really just illuminating things that came out of that interview. And I wanted to address some of them and talk about some of them today. The biggest one that we're going to end up talking about today is the AIAA slides that Sal kept mentioning throughout the interview. It was interesting because I took another look at them and I went, wow, I think I can explain all of these now. So I want to look at those with you guys. Before we do that, I want to talk about some other aspects of things that Sal brought up. So, do I have the clip? Let me see. Okay, I think I have to pull it up on my Twitter real quick. So, I also just want to go, if you did not pay attention, I want to give you what I thought was probably the biggest takeaway from the Sal interview overall. I want to play this clip from the interview where I asked Sal about how far advanced the United States technology is. Now, the reason why I want to bring that up, and I found the clip right here, is that I've realized through several interactions with Sal that he can't say that much stuff publicly. He's being monitored pretty heavily. So, 1 second, I'm trying to fix this. There we go. So I realized I have to start getting creative with the questions that I'm asking him to get him to be able to respond in a way that gives us some information. So this is the reason why you probably saw me asking questions like, for example, he opened the door to, don't depreciate, don't fire any more people. So then I said, well, why should Elon Musk not fire you? What is it that you do that's so important? And of course I know he can't answer the question because a lot of what Sal does is probably classified or secret stuff. But the point there is not just to say, oh, I'm so creative when I ask questions, but to show you guys that we as a community need to be asking harder questions to these people that have inside information. We need to be asking them harder questions. So here you go. One of my questions then was, how far advanced do you think that the military is? And the reason for this question is that it gives us insight into Sal's personal opinion over you know, technology. How far advanced is the government secretly behind the scenes? So here we go. How many years behind the military do you think the public is technologically right now? People say, oh, the military is secretly advanced beyond the public. What is your opinion? How, if you had to give it like a number of decades, what would you say?
Put it this way. If any enemy out there has some crazy notion to invade, to attack, to come out of the blue sky and do something harmful to us, I would please ask them, for their own sake and that of their mothers, to please do not take such steps. It will be quick, it will be very dirty, and you'll never do it again.
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to hear, and pretty much what I expected. Wow. Okay, so like when we watch that, what a way to respond to that question. And when I was smiling, the reason why you see me smiling is I can tell the very moment like Sal paused like that, I knew what was coming was going to be something on the order of, we have technology that nobody else can touch. And that's essentially what he's saying there. I mean, how else do you interpret that? And from somebody like Sal to say something like that, that is as good of endorsement that you can get for the military having magical technology. If anyone were to mess with the United States, it's not even, no one's even really close. But the problem with this technology is that people can catch up quickly. Somebody mentioned in the chat, Sal is pissed off. It's very possible. That was one of the things that I wanted to mention about his interview. Something that probably didn't get as much attention as I think it probably should have, which is Sal voluntarily said, because I asked about the patents again, and Sal voluntarily said there was some kind of committee that was formed. And the committee was going to determine whether or not Sal was given some kind of team to research this stuff. Okay. So apparently the way I understood the story, and I might need to listen to it again, was that some team had agreed with Sal's work that it was legit, but that maybe somebody on the team or somebody else then nixed it. And so part of the reason why Sal is whistleblowing in the way that he is, if you want to call it whistleblowing, is that he is basically cock-blocked from researching this science for the Navy, which I think is wild. If that's true, yeah, I wonder, I asked if Hal Puthoff is the one, and he said no, but I'm now realizing I should have asked if it was Eric Davis. Because doesn't Sal have bad blood with Eric Davis for some reason? Why is everybody saying E. Davis? Like, seems like everybody thinks Eric Davis is the guy. Why? Okay. Was I the only one who didn't know it was Eric Davis? Oh, he said it was Eric Davis? Oh, shit. Oh, I missed that. I guess I wasn't paying attention. Chat, you guys were paying more attention than me. Okay, so Eric Davis cock-blocked Sal and prevented him from getting his team. Now, that is so goddamn sketchy, chat. Pardon me for taking the Lord's name, but that is so sketchy. Because that means, like, I'm basically saying that Eric Davis and Hal Puthoff, they've figured this technology out. And so if one of them or either of them is gatekeeping Sal when he's trying to figure this, you know, high energy electromagnetic field generator stuff out, then why would they be doing that? Because they've already figured it out and they don't want anybody else to get it. So I'm starting to wonder now if Sal was getting gatekept. He was getting gatekept from this technology by the people that have already figured it out. Pretty wild. I'll be honest with you guys. I already kind of knew that Eric Davis was the guy. So that's probably why it went over my head. I already kind of knew from behind the scene discussions. So the Eric Davis thing doesn't surprise me at all. Not at all. I already knew there was bad blood, what have you. I also thought it was interesting that Sal said that he would testify. I was expecting him to not say that he wouldn't testify. He dodged the question about whether or not we can intercept a hypersonic missile as well. I mean, he said we can do it with directed energy weapons, which I thought was bold as well. Sal said a lot of bold stuff. He basically said we could use a directed energy weapon like HARP to take out a nuke in the sky, which of course we can. This is literally what I've been saying. So at this point, like I'm actually, when I was hearing some of that, I'm even starting to wonder now if it's me feeding Sal ideas or Sal feeding me ideas. Because I know he watches some of my content as well, which is mind-blowing to think. One of the other things that I think didn't get a lot of topic, one second, I'm going to sneeze. Whichever one of you just cursed me with a voodoo sneezing curse, not cool, fam. Not cool. Okay, the other thing was the superintelligence aspect. Almost like three-body problem. This is something that I've thought about a lot, which is, what if there's just a giant superintelligence? Now, Sal framed it in the way where he's saying, what if the universe is a giant living organism? The universe itself is a conscious living organism. And I look at it more of like, I don't know, how do I look at it? I guess the way that I look at it is that an AI has no limit to how intelligent it can theoretically get. It's just more and more information that an AI is going to be able to absorb. So I see no reason why a superintelligence isn't theoretically possible, especially once you learn that we can tap into 0-point energy all around us everywhere. If that's the case, then you have the resources and means and now ability to potentially have your AI become a superintelligence. Because I'm a nerd, this also reminds me of this comic series that I was thinking about earlier today. It's an X-Men comic series called Powers of X and House of X. And in this comic series, without spoiling much, the overarching theme of this series is a cyclical back and forth, let's say, battle or conflict between biological beings and inorganic beings. So the idea between which is superior, an organic being or an AI, an artificial one? And does it reach a point where an organic being that has been amplified by inorganic AI become more powerful than both? And does it just go back and forth in terms of who's dominant, AI intelligence, or artificial intelligence, or biological intelligence? Synthetic intelligence is a good way to explain it. Thank you, John. Thank you. So that's the overarching theme of it. And it always freaked me out. Because when you think like really long term, not on human scales, but on thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of years scales, you think that should probably happen out there. Why would a computer not get super intelligent? And this is part of why I'm, let's say, pretty strongly all in on the simulation hypothesis. So for people that are out there to say, Ashton, do you believe in a superintelligence? I would say yes. And I would say you can call it God if you want. You can call it the universe. You can interpret it in many different ways, which I think is beautiful because that's also true of God. God can be interpreted in many different ways. Physical, metaphysical, emotional, however you want. So I absolutely consider myself spiritual. When it comes to organized religion, I don't practice organized religion, but I was baptized Roman Catholic. So I do think that I am, I do believe that there is something more special about this universe. And I think the more you dig into the science, the more you also come to terms and realize that that's the case. Last thought too on the Sal thing, and then we're going to dig into some of the science stuff, is he said that basically the military has their own AI. They have their own AI, which of course they do. They have their own proprietary AI that you only use when you're like on a air-gapped secure network. Like, okay, I'm surprised that's not making the news. Like, I haven't heard anybody saying that. I mean, it seems obvious, but I've heard no one saying that. And Sal just gave the beans away and said that they're not allowed to use other AI while they're working because anything you feed the AI, it's learning at the same time. Does that not freak anybody else out? Am I the only one that's freaked out by that? Like, I'm kind of concerned that more people weren't like, oh shit, he just told us that all the AIs are learning off of everything that we do and that the US government's not allowed to use the other AIs for that reason and that they have their own AI as well. And I think that's just really big because I'm under the impression, guys, at this point, I have no evidence for it other than 2 videos of some orbs spinning around really paranormally. But I'm under the impression that they've got like AGI, like advanced general intelligence, like their AI is like crushes public AI. I'm like very sure. And the reason why I get more and more sure is every day, I've especially been on a science kick the last couple of weeks. I've read a lot of shit the last couple of weeks. And I've been using AI to augment my understanding. And the AI is incredibly good right now. Like really good. You can just have like human conversations with it at this point. And I mean, let's just put it like this. The AI right now is already the public one, more sentient than the Redditors are. It's more sentient to me. It feels more human interacting with the AI to me than it does when I interact with a Redditor. Like the AI is more logical. The AI can like have a conversation back and forth. Like it doesn't get hung up like on a broken script as much. Like it's coding and it's like software is just better quality than the Redditors are. They need to upgrade the Redditors to the AI quality, honestly. It would just make the internet way better. I'm just throwing it out there. Chad. Let me look at my list here. What else? Okay, so this is kind of then going to lead into what I want to discuss in the plasma, I think, here. I guess the last thing is the Gershon. God, I'm never going to say this guy's name right ever once in my life. Gerenstein effect. Gerenstein? I don't know. Something like that. That force, that effect, holy crap, I didn't realize we're going to see this effect listed in the slides. I didn't show this effect until a couple weeks ago when we watched the Master Evo video where he was showing the 3D model of the electric force fields. And he explains if you power up the voltage really high, the force, that you will see the force fields suddenly change directions. They become scalar. They go from wrapping around to becoming straight out. And that's what Sal is talking about. That's what Sal is saying. So Sal is saying in his patents that if you hit a conductor with really high voltage, potentially pulsed voltage, you can change the way the electric fields are acting. And this might be analogous to gravity. It might be analogous to gravity, if not gravity manipulation directly. So one of the things that I noticed talking to Sal, now I see it clear as day. You guys might not have seen it, or if you're not familiar, is that he uses different words that are academically accepted to mean the same stuff that we've been talking about with zero-point energy, the ether, gravity manipulation, etc. And it came out a lot in the interview with him. In many cases, Sal's like, you already know. Like when I said, what's the secret to fusion? And he's like, you already know. You already know the answer. Now that's not what you want to get from your guest. You don't want your guest to say that. You want the point of the interview is for the guest to say the stuff. Yes, of course, I have a speculation on what the answer is, but I want to hear the guest say it so I can, be affirmed in my understanding. Okay. Now, I have a new understanding of plasma. Hello, Billy, no downside. I always like to say hi to you. Okay. And then we're going to get right into this. David R. says, yes, I too believe the universe is a living organism as well. There's no accident that the strings of the galaxies look like neutrons of the brain. Yeah, and it could be even weirder where it could be that all of us are the same person and that consciousness and time is all just an illusion as well. So things can get very weird, and I think we should be open-minded as to all possibilities of what all this stuff can mean. Now, I have had several revelations over the past week or so about my understanding of plasma, the electron, atoms, etc. And so I've been trying to think about how to make this make the most sense for everybody. I hope in the future that I'll make some video explainers that explain some of the science concepts with some nice graphics in them, but coming down the pipe. For now, you have to settle for this, chat. So a lot of the problem with physics, in my opinion, after digging into a lot of this, is like how we view our model of the atom and of the electron. And so a lot of people would say this is particle physics that I'm talking about, that I'm scrutinizing, criticizing here. And I have a feeling that we're going to find that the electron is not a simple particle. And we already kind of know that. It's a wave. And we may find that the electron is just a representation of, say, an emanation of energy from the ether, from the zero-point field. That kind of view of the universe seems very extreme, but allow me to lay the foundation for you. And a little side tangent here. What is a plasma? What is a plasma? A plasma is a gas. Any gas. You could have a hydrogen gas, for example. The air is a gas. A gas that has been ionized. Ionized meaning a hydrogen atom has one electron. If I rip the electron off of that atom, that hydrogen atom, now I have a negatively charged electron and I have a positively charged hydrogen ion. So when you ionize the gas, you're separating the electrons from the ions, and you usually do that through a pulse of energy that hits the ion, hits the atom. So a plasma is just a blob of gas that has had this effect happened to it. Now, did you know, chat, that if you make a plasma, when you are seeing the light, well, let me ask you this. What do you think you're seeing in a plasma when you see the glow, the illumination, the light? What do you think we're seeing when we see that in our plasmas? We see a glow in there. What are we seeing? Well, we're seeing light. We're seeing light being formed. But how is light being formed? Well, light's being formed because some of those electrons that have been separated from the ions are coming back together. They're coming back together. They're fusing. When you see the glow in your plasma, you're seeing fusion occur. Why? Because when the ions fuse together, what happens? They release energy. They're releasing energy. So there you go. When you are seeing the illumination, you are seeing fusion occurring. And therefore, you are seeing the illumination in your plasma. Otherwise, you would not see the electrons. The electrons would be invisible. Now, why is this really interesting? Because I was watching a clip, and I think I have it here. And this is hopefully going to all make sense. If it doesn't, oops, don't blame me, chat. Okay. So shout out to Crypto Alchemist, Bernie.
Did you know that in Fallout?
Looks like he's
really
making some
hard,
clips.
It produces a spark, but there's other materials. If you, it turns out that other materials are if you hit them hard enough, they do that too. Right?
Winterberg was obsessed about sonoluminescence inside of plasmas, because anytime you can create a cavitation that collapses on itself, that's where you have this squeezing of all the states, and that's where you can potentially get 0-point energy release.
Okay. Wow. Friedwart Winterberg. That was Jared Yates, who went to Friedwart Winterberg's house, took all his notes, took all of his research. This was a guy that was a project paperclip scientist that came and worked for the United States. So anyway, Jared Yates is saying that this scientist, this fusion scientist, was obsessed with sonoluminescence. He was obsessed with sonoluminescence, which is light being produced by sound waves in water. Light being produced by sound waves in water. Why was he obsessed with it? Because he believed that you could use cavitation in plasma to produce fusion. So when we talk about cavitation, we're talking about our little mantis punchy shrimp. Google mantis punchy shrimp if you want. Little mantis punchy shrimp punches so fast that when the cavitation forms from his fist coming back, it creates this implosive suction effect. And that implosive suction effect is exactly what we're trying to find and achieve with fusion. So this shows us that Friedwart Winterberg was thinking in his head that the answer to fusion is not temperature. The answer to fusion is gravity, getting everything to come together. That's what that shows. And here's a little bonus from that clip that I did not expect.
And this is a good one, because this is a gap in the standard model, because the standard model cannot explain where the light comes from.
Let's fucking go, chat. Jeremy Reese jumps in and says, this is a good one, because the standard model cannot explain where the light is coming from in sonoluminescence. Let's go. And you just think about it. Of course they can't explain it, because all that's happening is sound waves are acoustically resonating in water, and it's producing light. It's producing light. I got a couple clips for you if you're not familiar with sonoluminescence. They can't explain it. Why is it? Okay, there. Classical physics cannot explain why light is being produced in that scenario. But we know exactly why it's happening. Why is it happening, chat? I just told you why. Because fusion's occurring. Because fusion is occurring. That's the only way it can be happening. Where can the light be coming from? The light must be coming from fusion reactions happening. Let's go! Hold on. Let me play the other clip real quick while I let... Dude, I hate what they did to stream it.
It's a process called sonoluminescence.
The first time I saw sonoluminescence was in a darkened room. I was transfixed to look at this spherical flask of fluid. And you look into the center, and in the center see a glowing blue-purple light, which could be seen with the unaided eye.
Bruh, what? Science can't even explain it. It's so easy. The answer is so easy. Oh, no what? Sorry, guys, my sound was all messed up. The answer was so easy the whole time. Fusion is the answer. But why? So now people will say, okay, wait. Sound waves in water are producing light, and they think that they call it a star in the jar. Classic physics can't explain it at all. No explanation whatsoever in classical physics. But the answer is so simple. What's happening is the acoustic waves are creating a cavitation effect. They're doing the same thing the punchy shrimp guy is doing. And so what happens with the water? It's collapsing. In fact, there might be two things happening. It might be creating negative energy, which causes the hydrogen to break apart from the water. And then recombining in that exact point where you see the light happening. The reason why classical physics is not allowed to admit that sonoluminescence is real is that they cannot explain how that can be happening at these low temperatures. How is just water and sound causing fusion to occur, which they believe requires these massive temperatures? If the temperatures were so high as to what fusion requires, then why is all the water in that sonoluminescence not boiling? Why is it not being vaporized? Why is the glass in the star in the jar not shattering from the pressure? These are all questions there is no answer from the classical view of physics. And you guys know I love when we find something where there's no answer for the classical view of physics. Because then we take that and we compare it against the model of zero-point energy. And in the model of zero-point energy, we don't have a temperature requirement for fusion. In fact, there isn't a real temperature requirement for fusion at all. That's just something that humans decided. The reason why the sun is hot is not because plasma is super hot. It's because gravity and pressure are making it really hot. That's why the sun's really hot. Now, the other thing I want to mention about plasma here is now I understand non-equilibrium plasma. Sal's been mentioning non-equilibrium plasma. I understand the words, but I don't really know what it meant. Now I know exactly what it means. The conventional understanding of plasma, let's call it simplistic view of plasma, says that plasma is going to be neutral, electrically neutral. Why? Because when you separate the electron from the ion, the electron is going to go back and try to recombine with the next ion that it finds, which is why we're seeing the glow when we see the plasma reaction happen, because we're seeing the recombination, or in the case of the fusion, we're seeing the fusion occur. Now, when it what was I going to say? Okay. So here's the thing. So an equilibrium plasma then, what is an equilibrium plasma? An equilibrium plasma is where the electrons and the ions are pairing back up. So everything has become neutral. End of the day, you've got one positively charged ion and one negatively charged electron. You add it up together, what do you have? 0, right? 0 net charge. So the conventional view of a plasma is the plasma overall is going to have no net charge. Equilibrium plasma, no net charge. So what is a non-equilibrium plasma then? If an equilibrium plasma is a plasma that has no net charge, a non-equilibrium plasma is going to have a net charge. So this is a plasma that goes against the conventional understanding, one where you keep it out of equilibrium. So instead of it recombining, reneutralizing, you set the plasma up in such a way where that doesn't happen, where that does not happen. And instead, you do get a positive charge. And you create a conducting plasma. Yes, a conducting plasma, a plasma that can have electric charge flow through it. And if anyone says this is not possible, all you have to say is, yes, it is. Look at lightning. Look at ball lightning, in fact. You could argue they figured this out because they just looked at ball lightning, which is a natural phenomenon like this, and just figured out how to do it themselves. And yes, they control it. How do they control it? How do they stabilize it? How do they control the flow of the plasma? Magnetohydrodynamics, which is just magnetism controlling liquid or a gas that's acting like a liquid, like a plasma in this case. It also makes sense that a plasma, as an ionized gas, would strongly interact with the 0-point energy. That makes sense because you're just creating your own medium. In the area where the plasma exists, you've created your own custom medium. And we know that plasma is electric, or 0-point energy is electromagnetic in nature. So it makes sense that an electrically charged plasma, non-equilibrium plasma, could strongly interact with that 0-point energy. If you guys haven't noticed, I'm setting you guys up for the Salvador Pais patents and the review here as well, so that it'll go cleaner and smoother. I don't have to explain as much. Okay, there's a couple things I want to read out here for you as well. So I started asking Grok some pretty just basic questions. I don't like to lean on AI. A lot of people will ask AI everything. Double layers typically form in a plasma when a current flows through the plasma and the plasma becomes unable to maintain charge neutrality over a certain region. For example, if electrons move faster than ions due to their lower mass, so electrons have less mass, so they're going to move faster, a region of excess positive charge can build up, followed by a region of excess negative charge. This instability creates the layered structure. Wow. So basically, there is already a known mechanism to cause an electric charge to build up in a plasma. And it's called there being a double layer, where you set up this, let's say, topological configuration. When I say topological, I'm talking about the shape of it. You set up this topological configuration of the plasma where you get the plasma stuck in this non-equilibrium orientation. And now you've created maybe a free energy device. You've created a situation where electricity is just flowing naturally in this plasma ball. Because at the end of the day, when does electricity flow? When we've created a non-equilibrium charge situation, disparity, and asymmetry. More positive charge here than over here, negative charge over here. That's what they're talking about here. The saddest thing is Ashton is talking to us, people in YouTube chats. No, that's the most beautiful thing. This has always been a grassroots movement of just people that want to understand science, technology, UFO stuff, whatever. Part of me, honestly, would want to reject a Joe Rogan interview because he's not even worthy of this knowledge at this point. This community has already surpassed every single UFO disclosure advocate and most, if not every podcaster out there in terms of knowledge about UFOs, electrogravitics, extended electrodynamics, and it's not even close at this point. We're just basically blazing our own path this way. They should be grateful if we would want to talk to them and explain this stuff to them in a private setting, you know? So I thought that's interesting because what we're going to find, and probably what we'll dig into more in some follow-up streams, is how do we stabilize the plasma? How do we stabilize the plasma? That's what this is all going to be about, right? Like we figured out it's all about these non-equilibrium plasmas. The question is going to be how do we stabilize it? And then how do we stabilize it for whatever purpose we want to use? To either teleport something, maybe annihilate something, make a black hole, or just use it to extract energy. We should be able to set up one of these plasma orbs and just pull energy from it all the time, in theory, at least. But we have to learn a little bit more about it. Now, one more thing I want to mention that will lead us into the Salvador Pais patents. I actually asked AI because I wanted to get some information. I was going back and forth with AI. AI was saying, oh, the patents are theoretical, and a scientist claimed that they were, you know, pseudoscience or something like that. And I'm like, dude, I told AI to go read like the Warzone articles and stuff about the patent back and forth. This is what AI said. The Navy's support via Sheehy, which was the chief technology officer, and the patent attorney Mark O'Glut suggests some level of confidence or investment. The NAWCAD spent $508,000 between 2016 and 2019 testing the high energy electromagnetic field generator, according to FOIA documents reported by the War Zone. Yet the same documents say the Pais effect couldn't be proven, and the project didn't transition further within the Navy. Salvador Pais then moved to the Air Force, Space Force. So presumably Pais went to the Space Force in 2019 or 2020. I didn't even know that. And that's apparently per NAWCAD, whatever that NAWCADs. Timothy Boulay said that in 2021. So then AI says, this raises the question. If it's real, why no clear follow-through? Classified success could explain the military is ahead of the public, but we're left with a gap between claims and tangible proof. I think that's a good segue into looking at Sal's claims and what he's saying, is that we're left with a gap. We're left with a gap between claims and tangible public available proof. And this is why the MH370 videos are so important. They are the bridge. They are the bridge between claims and tangible proof. And we are never going to make an experiment in the public that can do that. Not in any of our lifetimes. That, what you see here, requires an extreme amount of resources to just build that. So I just want to absolve anyone of the notion that we're just going to go build this in our garage or something like that. That ain't never going to happen. Not in a million years. Now, let me tell you, while I have one more sip of my coffee, what is Salvador Pais's science? What is it? A lot of people out there ask, what is the Pais effect? What is the superforce? help me to understand that at a basic level. So here we go. The Pais effect is controlled motion through electrically charged matter under like accelerated vibration or spin. So you can think of this as like the Eugene Plotkinov experiments about anti-gravity in the 90s, where Plotkinov was saying you can spin this superconductor and we can see this anti-gravitational effect. Sal is saying we can charge up, electrically charge an object and spin it really, really fast, and you will interact with the 0-point energy. That's what Sal is saying there with the superforce or the Pais effect. And if we can interact with that 0-point energy, we can interact with the ground state of reality. We can interact with space-time. So the Pais effect, you should think of the Pais effect as the way to create really any of the patents that he talks about. But you imagine it as the mechanism by which we create a gravitational beam. How do we make a gravitational beam? You take some electrically charged matter and you spin it up really fast, or you vibrate it really fast. Now, if you don't believe me, let me just say this. When I spin my hand like this or shake my hand like this really fast, I'm creating gravitational waves. Yes, I am creating gravitational waves right now by spinning my hand like this. They're very, 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 very slight, but they exist. That's the exact same idea as what Sal's saying, but Sal's saying we can amp that effect up by charging up the object. By charging up the object. So that's the Pais effect. So now everybody understands the Pais effect is this idea that we can manipulate or change gravity, interact with the 0-point energy field. God, what's wrong with my sound? Interact with the 0-point energy field using electrically charged matter under accelerated spin or vibration. And the reason why spin and vibration are interchangeable is from the quantum mechanical perspective, they're the same. From the quantum mechanical perspective, movement is movement and action is energy. So whether or not you're spinning or you're vibrating, either thing, whatever. The same thing. One's two-dimensional, one's a three-dimensional interpretation. Okay. Whew. Guys, I'm doing pretty good here. I'm growing confident. I almost made this stream called Physicist Explains UFO Navy Patents, but I figured it might be a little too triggering and self-aggrandizing to call myself a physicist just yet. But we're getting there. We're getting there, guys. Okay, next thing. Let's take a look at these patents. So I dug through the I always want to say AAA, AIAA presentation that Sal did. It's the AIAA 2019 SciTech Forum. And so for today, instead of like pulling all the patents up and looking at them, this I guess it's a slideshow PowerPoint presentation basically goes through all of the patents. It's actually a better presentation than trying to explain each patent individually, because this will build upon the concepts that I just explained, from the plasma to the 0-point energy, everything in between. And yes, this was actually, okay, maybe I'll answer this first. How do you produce the super high voltage? This is actually what Stephen Greer was asked on the Kurt Jaimungal's podcast a couple years ago. I have the clip, but actually, you know what? Maybe I will play the clip. Maybe this is the perfect time. Hold on. Where is it? Here it is.
Just so you know, come to this podcast in particular for the technicalities of physics. That's what our main bread and butter is, physics.
Okay.
Yes.
You can tell Kurt Jaimungal was not having Stephen Greer, but Stephen Greer explains it actually really well here.
That's been done by people like Ken Shoulders, who since have passed away, who had his charged cluster arrays. And basically what those were little tiny ball lightning. And it's now been discovered that these little electrostatic ball lightning type packets, when they discharge, they're actually perturbing or stimulating this quantum flux 0-point field of energy. And it causes a cavitation in space-time that causes an enormous force, a forward-moving force that can be put against a piston or turn.
Bro, I mean, that is as good of an explanation as you can expect from somebody like Stephen Greer. That is directly on the mark. It's producing a cavitation in space-time. Yes, exactly. Producing a cavitation, right? The punchy shrimp guy in space-time. And when that happens, what happens when you produce a cavitation in space-time? Things come together, guys. This is anti-gravity. This is gravity manipulation. There it is, right there. He just explained it. Now, somebody asked, but what about the voltage? How do you achieve these voltages that you're saying that we need where all of a sudden the rules of physics start to change? I think he gets asked right here. Let me see.
Which is what H2O water is. Yes. So what it was really the amount of hydrogen.
Oh, you know what? It was the overall interview that he asked it about. So Kurt Mungle asks him, how do you achieve these voltages? Because he says as well that you need these high voltages. The answer is plasma. The answer to that is plasma. And so I don't know how much we're going to dig into it tonight, but the last thing that I wanted to talk about with the plasma, and that question reminded me, is, well, how is the plasma able to achieve such high energy density and charge voltages? And the answer there, I'm starting to think, is something that I asked Sal about, is that there is ground states of the hydrogen atom below equilibrium. There are ground states below equilibrium. There are, or how do we say it? Let's say there are energy bands, electron energy bands below n equals 1. And why is this huge? Because conceptually what this means is that we can squeeze more energy out of our atoms, a lot more energy. So we can squeeze the energy out of the atoms more than what we conventionally think that we can do right now. And what happens after we squeeze that energy out? It's going to go right back. So this is like our trampoline effect. This is our ocean of 0-point energy we're sitting on top of. We pull out more energy out of that than what conventional physics thinks is possible by lowering that electron orbital. And when we do that, it's going to come right back up. It's going to equilibrium. It's going to go back to equilibrium. And that energy is going to come from the 0-point energy field. This is why Hal Puthoff's 1987 paper, The Ground State of the Hydrogen Atom, is so revolutionary. Because in that paper, what Hal Puthoff is saying is that the atom, the hydrogen atom itself, is constantly exchanging energy with the 0-point energy field. And what that means is if we pull energy out of the hydrogen atom, out of the orbital of the electron around the hydrogen atom, we pull that energy out, the 0-point energy field is going to replenish it automatically. That's free energy. That concept is free energy. The 0-point energy field is going to replenish the electron orbital automatically. And then it's just a matter of how much energy can we squeeze out of the atom? How much energy can we squeeze out of it? The last thing I'll say on this before we dig into it is I don't know all the answers to this yet. You are watching this live or maybe recorded, and I am still learning in the process. The next step for me is to figure out who is right. We already know they've figured out a way to achieve extremely high energy densities at low temperatures because we can see it in a thermal video. The question is, how are they doing that? Are they doing that because they're manipulating space-time itself? like Salvador Pais says, and they can manipulate the blocks of space-time? Or are they able to do it because the hydrogen atom itself, we can squeeze blood from the stone, so to speak. We can go below the ground state. And when we go below the ground state, that's negative. Going below the equilibrium is negative by all the math. And now we understand what negative energy is, going below the negative. So the people that I want to talk to next are Randall Mills, who's been highly discredited, and that makes me want to talk to him even more, who claims that there are states below n equals 1. He believes there are fractional states, which would mean that we can extract incredible, practically unlimited energy out of hydrogen atoms. And it will, definitely make us rewrite parts of our understanding of physics, but it corrects the misunderstanding in fusion. We are not simply limited to the atoms interacting with each other when we get our fusion reactions, because we're in a medium as well. And what that means, there's another input. So we can create situations where we can extract huge amounts of energy at relatively low energy costs. That's free energy. Extracting huge amounts of energy at lower energy costs is free energy. Dominic, Jesse Michaels' interview tomorrow with Stephen Greer. I'm definitely going to be watching it for sure. Very curious to see what he says, especially now that Greer's opened up about the MH370 videos. I'll be interested to see if Jesse asks him about them. If he does, that would be huge. I also am more and more want to actually talk to Stephen Greer, because I feel like all these other people talking to him are asking the same stupid questions over and over and over again. And I feel like if I have a conversation with him, I can ask him some questions that'll push the ball forward a little bit. Maybe get us some answers here or there. So I hope I get to have a conversation with him at some point, but we'll see. I'm not in a rush. Okay, guys. So plasma is the answer. And also, Sal said that another way we might be able to achieve these energy densities are lasers, attosecond laser pulses, focused onto a single point. The actual energy densities of those attosecond pulses starts to get to the point where you can bend space-time by having them collapse onto a single point. That the energy densities, because the attosecond pulses are like timed down to such a small, minute point that if you were just to repeatedly pulse them in there, you can actually achieve the energy densities required. In fact, it was Hal Puthoff that was saying that petawatt lasers might actually be powerful enough to produce a wormhole. So attosecond lasers are significantly more powerful than those. Okay. Yeah, lasers. It was not. It wasn't visual lasers circling that plane though, which is why I believe there was most likely something inside of the plasma balls, and I'm working on trying to understand that as well. Just because somebody asked in the chat, I'll say that one of the things I've begun to think about is how did they create the standing wave in the plasma to make the plasma coherent? And most likely they probably have an antenna inside the plasma that can move to make sure that it always creates the right size standing wave to allow for the plasma to be whatever shape they need it to be. There you go. Take it to the bank. That's my early on prediction on how they're doing it, but we will find out. Here you go, chat. Here it is. Room temperature superconducting system for use on a hybrid aerospace undersea craft. You really can't ask for a better name of a presentation than that, can you? Dr. Salvador Cesar Pais, Department of the Navy, NAVAIR, NOCAD. There you go. What up, Rebel Raider? Welcome. What up, Lauren White? Hope it's going well. So, right off the bat, quantum field fluctuation. So he starts with setting the table. Everything is quantum fields. Everything is waves all around us everywhere. Here he is speaking to the ether. He's speaking to the 0-point energy field. Second paragraph, he's speaking to the fact that we can interact with this field using the Pais effect. Remember, I told you, what is the Pais effect? Electrically charged matter. And he's saying here we can couple meaning connect to that 0-point energy using frequency or vibration of electrically charged matter. And then he says, consider that we are immersed in an ocean of energy, the vacuum energy state, but we don't seem to interact with it. If you break the symmetry, you go far from equilibrium, then you can interact with this vacuum state. Therefore, you can interact with the way the fields are interchanging with one another. I love the way Sal writes. I feel like anybody can understand this. He's saying that if we mess with space-time, we can change the laws of physics. We can change the way that physics acts. It's so easy to comprehend the concepts of what Sal is saying here. And he says, an aggregate, a structured shape, is a superposition of quantum field fluctuations that are permeating space-time. So what are you? What am I? What is anything? Everything is coherent quantum wave structures, including us, including mass, coherent quantum wave structures. Matter, energy, and space-time are emergent constructs which arise out of a fundamental framework, which is the vacuum energy state. So what Sal is saying here is everything comes from the ether. Everything comes from the 0-point energy. This energy right here comes from the 0-point energy. All matter, everything around you comes from the 0-point energy field. This is why Sal is saying that perhaps the universe itself is a conscious, superconscious, superintelligence. Because Sal realizes that everything, all energy and matter are the same, and that all energy and matter originally come from the 0-point energy field. And that potentially everything we see as reality is a far from equilibrium state that's separated from that 0-point energy field. Does that make sense? The idea that all matter and energy originally came from the 0-point energy field, and we are just simply in a coherent state, separated from that field temporarily, right now. And that's what our reality is, which would imply that our consciousness comes from that 0-point energy field as well, which was a beautiful thought that Sal said when I said, if you reversed your age, would you lose your memories? Would you lose your memories if you reverse your age? You know, that's actually pretty controversial. I might even post that on my Twitter. I had several people reach out to me and say that they've done weird time travel shit and that it didn't change their memories. And Sal said that he didn't think it would change our memories because he believes that our body is a receiver for the soul. That's out there. I like it, though. I do like it. I actually am leaning that way as well, if I'm honest with you guys. And I usually am honest, if not always. So then what Sal's saying is that artificially generated high-energy electromagnetic fields will interact strongly with the ether, strongly with the 0-point energy field. So what we need to do is we need to create very high-energy electromagnetic fields through vibration and frequency and spin. And then he's also saying, I mean, I can read between the lines here, but what Sal is saying is that the 0-point energy is electromagnetic nature itself. And that's why we can interact with it. And then this is a beautiful slide. Sal says, solving the vacuum catastrophe. This might be the most important slide. If you guys watch my podcast, I talk about the vacuum catastrophe every single time. I don't even need the slide for this, actually. I'm so good at this point. The cosmic microwave background is when we look out into outer space, we measure all the heat that we see. We call it the cosmic microwave background. All the heat. We add up all the heat. That must be the total energy in the universe, right? Wrong. The real way to calculate the energy in the universe is to add up all the quantum fluctuations. Imagine all the universe's little cells like this, added up. Add up all the quantum fluctuations in every single cell. Add them all up. Turns out when we do that, the amount of energy that we come to is over 100 orders of magnitude, 100 zeros higher than when we just look out and add up all the heat. And so Sal says, well, what is the answer? Why? Why is there this huge difference? And Sal says that we are not measuring the vibrational energy of the quantum vacuum when we look up there and measure the heat. Measuring just the heat is not all the energy in the universe. In fact, back to full screen. Just saying that all the heat is all the energy in the universe has got to be the dumbest goddamn thing I've ever heard in my life. In fact, I keep thinking there's no way academia and physics can get any lower. And then there's always some new bullshit I find out that makes me just go, oh man, we are absolute idiots. We really just looked up in the outer space and went, let's add up all the heat. That's all the energy there is. Of course that's wrong. The whole universe is not empty. It's an oscillating ocean of energy, oscillating all the time, just like the ocean is. You wouldn't look at the ocean and say there's no energy in that ocean. You wouldn't measure the amount of energy in the ocean by the temperature. At least I don't think you would. Maybe you do. No, you would have to measure it by the oscillations of the waves, right? Like the back and forth. There's actually people that want to throw like things in the ocean and just use the ocean waves to generate kinetic energy. I mean, there you go. So what Sal's saying here is that if you consider these space cells and all the vibrational energy in every cell, you're going to come up with the right answer. And then he says that this is consistent with recent experimental data from the Planck satellite, which I had to ask about. I didn't really know much about it. I'm pretty sure this here is a quote from John Archibald Wheeler. I think it's from him. Energy tells space-time how to fluctuate, and space-time tells energy how to propagate. What does that mean? What does that mean? Energy tells space-time how to fluctuate, and space-time tells energy how to propagate. What that means is that the energy density is what's causing gravity, the waviness that we see in our space-time. And the space-time geometry is what allows the energy density to spread out. So it's a lot like pouring paint onto a canvas. You pour the paint onto the canvas, and that paint is going to spread out. And imagine that paint spreading out is our space-time spreading out over the canvas. So what is it that gives our space-time form? It's the paint, not the canvas. The paint on the canvas is what gives space-time form. We're made of the paint. Does that make sense? We're made of the paint. The paint on the canvas is what gives space-time its form. It spreads out. And the divots and the cracks and the non-homogeneous nature of space-time is why we see this gravity pressure. Because we're sitting on a big divot in space-time right now called Earth. It's causing a big divot in space-time, gravity. Okay, let's keep going. I love that quote by John Archibald Wheeler, who, by the way, John Archibald Wheeler is also the person that said there's enough energy in this cup to vaporize all the Earth's oceans. By the way, dope 4 Orbs merch is still available. Now, room temperature superconductor for use on a, what's this mean again? Something hybrid craft, on a transmedium craft. Investigation of the quantum vacuum as a source of propulsion estimated that very short time scales of distance and time, and hence energy, over which the quantum vacuum must be interacted with for extracting enough propulsive energy. So here's another really interesting point. It was suggested that a system's inertia may be a consequence of the quantum vacuum electromagnetic behavior. Wow. Right here. Do you know who said that? Hal Puthoff said that. Bernard Haisch and Alfonso Ruda were the ones who wrote the papers that presumed or hypothesized that the 0 point energy could explain gravity, mass, and inertia. So what they're saying here is, why do you weigh anything? Why are you heavy? Why are you heavy? Why, when you go really fast, do you get heavier? Why can you not go the speed of light? Because there's resistance when you accelerate. That's inertia. Why do these things exist? The reason why these things exist is because we're in an ocean of energy. We're in the paint. So when you're moving through it, you're feeling resistance. It doesn't feel like you're feeling anything because you're used to it. Not only are you feeling the air resistance, but you're also feeling the resistance of inertia of space-time itself. So there you go. So inertia. So if we were then to manipulate the 0 point energy, we should be able to get rid of inertia, get rid of mass, modify mass. But so when we're modifying mass and inertia, we're not changing the size of an object. We're modifying the region around it. The region around it, because the space-time around it's what gives it mass. So when Eric Davis says you can't manipulate the mass of an object, he's sort of right, but also sort of wrong. Yeah, you can't directly manipulate the mass of an object, but if you manipulate the region around it, it does the same thing. It makes that object seem like it has less mass. It's going to make it float away. So how do we do this? Well, he says right here in the very next one, polarizing of the local vacuum energy state is analogous to modifying the local space-time energy density. There it is. How do you interact with it? How do you cause these effects? Well, he said it's analogous to modifying the energy density. So what's our energy density? This is our flat energy density. This is space-time. This is us sitting on top of space-time. This is our energy density. How do we manipulate it? We go like this. We go like this. When the Earth is sitting on top of this space-time, it's manipulating the energy density like this. We're sitting on the Earth that's manipulating the energy density like this, adding mass energy to the region. If you take energy out of the region, you do this. It's really this simple. Imagine a trampoline. So he says right there, we change the energy density in a local region of space-time, that will change space-time itself. So simple. It's a straightforward to understand concept. And if you do that, now you've changed inertia, you've changed the resistance to motion. So now extreme speeds are possible, including, you guessed it, faster than light travel. Okay, these equations I recognize right here. This looks like the equations 7, 8, and 9. The ones he told me that only I've recognized for some reason. These equations are speaking to energy amplification. These equations speak to energy amplification through increased vibration or frequency. So this is basically him saying that the Pais effect, the accelerated spin of charged matter, will create exponential growth of energy. exponential growth of energy. And then here he says, this is how we're going to use inertial mass reduction for this. We can achieve energy fluxes, he says right here, of 10 to the 33 watts per meter squared. So this is the part where people have a hard time believing that. People have a hard time believing that because that's a huge, huge number. But like I said, the lasers that we have now can achieve these energy densities. So even if you don't believe we can do it otherwise. Metamaterials are not needed for any of this. Turns out metamaterials are a bit of a psyop. Now, they're real and they can achieve these effects, but we're not the kind of civilization that's going to be relying on metamaterials. That's like saying you're going to rely on a flashlight for light. Cavemen didn't have flashlights. They had fire. They had torches, right? We're at the situation where we're going to get our plasma torch, but we're not quite ready for our plasma flashlight, if you get what I'm saying. So we don't need metamaterials to produce these effects. I think that that's why they've been psyoping us into thinking that we need some alien UFO metamaterial to do this. We don't. And that was a big revelation for me where I was not sure for a very long time if we needed alien materials or we could do this ourselves. And now I'm 100% sure no alien materials needed for any of this. None of the stuff we're discussing in here has any requirements of alien materials or anything exotic. That's an important point to bring up. So thank you for asking that. Okay, so we can achieve these energy densities. And if you get your energy density high enough, you are going to break the Schwinger limit. You break the Schwinger limit, and the Schwinger effect is that light, photons, begin to emerge out of nowhere. Photons, light, emerges out of nowhere during the Schwinger effect. And what Sal's saying here, and I asked him a follow-up on this, is that I think it was JK Philly fan that asked me to say this, is that can we change the Schwinger limit? So we have this ceiling, right? That we have this ceiling. Not only are we in an equilibrium on our ocean, but there's a ceiling. If you get your energy above this ceiling or below this threshold, however you want to think of it, now you are directly interacting with the nothingness of space-time. If you want to think of it like that. Emptiness of space-time, the fabric of the reality. And this is why Sal says that the superforce is essentially the underlying force of the universe that gives rise to all other forces. Sal's saying that if you engineer space-time in this way, you can actually change the way the forces act. You can change their behaviors. And that's why he's saying that the superforce gives rise to all the other forces. He's basically implying with that statement that we can actually achieve extremely high energy densities at low temperatures. He's saying that by changing the physical properties of the vacuum, we can basically cheat the laws of physics. That is an incredibly powerful claim to make. Incredibly powerful claim. And I really look forward to trying to understand whose conceptual viewpoint is the one that's correct, that makes the most sense. Is it the one where there are lower energy states of a hydrogen atom below 1? Or is it some other concept that makes the most sense on that? There's also this idea of dynamic nuclear polarization, which is a beautiful thought. Which is like saying, if I have two magnets that are charged the same way, they're never going to come together. But if I just flip one of the magnets over, then they're going to attract right away. What if that's also the same for the spin of an atom or an electron? What if it turns out you can change, just by flipping it over, you can change the way it acts to act opposite? Now it went from negatively charged to positively charged or something like that, right? That idea. And then also, what if you can manipulate these spins? If you can manipulate them on a broad scale, you can create coherence. You can create coherence. You can cause like a focus point to occur. So I like the idea and the concept also of dynamic nuclear polarization, which is using electric charge to line up a bunch of electrons. Yes, energy is matter and matter is energy. Great contributions. Appreciate you guys. Let's get back to this. Okay. And this is where he says that if we were to break down, go past the Schwinger limit, this is where you would get inertia control. This is where you're going to have no inertia. If we consider the cosmic space as a superfluid medium, when he says superfluid, he's basically saying this ocean of energy it acts like one big superfluid of energy all around us everywhere. We might be able to say that this type of device has the capability of inducing a phase transition from a turbulent regime to a laminar regime, thus allowing for smooth sailing. So what he's saying here is that this is essentially equivalent to making a slide. When you produce this, you can make a slide and you're just sliding wherever you want to go. You're falling forward. That's what a slide does, right? A slide makes you fall forward. So he's saying you can use this, you can actually break down space-time and use it to propel you forward and make it just fall forward into the gravity well that you create. Because when you are breaking down this space-time, you're changing the gravity properties of that region of space-time. So you can make it do whatever you want. You can make it repel you, push you, whatever you want it to do. And this is what we see happening in the MH370 videos. Why are we seeing these dark lines in front of the orbs? The reason why we see these dark lines in front of the orbs is because they're doing what Sal's saying here. They're breaking down space-time. God, I wish this was... They're breaking down space-time in front of them, and then they're just falling forward. Right? Look at those dark lines in front of the orbs. They're using some kind of laser that's breaking down space-time, and they can actually control the rate at which they break down space-time, and that changes their velocity. Is if you want to go really, really fast, you break down the space-time in front of you very strongly. You remove the energy in front of you at a very high rate. The rate at which you remove or add energy to the space in front of you will determine your velocity. How crazy is that, what I just said? The rate now, based on what just Sal said in that patent, we can now infer that if you can change gravity by changing the energy density in like this region of space-time, you can cause either a push or pull effect. So I could cause a push effect or a push effect. Whatever I wanted to cause, I could cause either of them. And that's obviously what they do. So how do you change your speed in that situation? You just change the rate at which you change the energy density of space-time. That will change your speed. So it actually becomes very simple to create calculations where you could just have a computer control these orbs, where the computer just changes the rate at which it's manipulating space-time to go whatever speed that you want it to go. Crazy, huh? And it's weird to think about movement in this context as well. Because now when you start thinking like, wait, I can just make a hole between this region and that spot, and like, am I even really moving or not moving? It gets weird. And that's the thing about Einstein's general relativity. It is weird like that. It is weird. That's why wormholes are possible. Because it gets very weird when you start to think about, am I moving or am I just standing still and everything else is moving? That's what we call relativity. Everything is relative. What I see from my perspective depends on my frame of reference and my local speed and where I'm at and where I'm moving. So why is teleportation possible? Because everything is relative like this. Because everything is relative like this, you can create an illusion where I'm actually not moving really fast, but people that look at me, it looks like I am. And from a realistic perspective, I am moving that fast. From a reality perspective, I did just teleport from here to over here. But from my perspective, I just sat in my chair. That's a wormhole. That's a warp drive. That's what these things are. So if you want to understand, if you've been sitting here watching and listening to this patiently, which thank you very much, hit the like, hit the subscribe, follow on Pilled or Rumble if you guys are not, if you guys are watching on those. Now you understand how endothermic propulsion works. How does endothermic propulsion work? Endothermic propulsion, an absorption of energy, is you're absorbing the energy from space-time. You're pulling the energy out of space-time. And when you do that, it's going to create a gravitational well. It's going to create a singularity. And it's going to pull you. That's all you have to do. And then so when anybody asks you, well, how do you control the speed when you make your gravity well? You say you just determine based on the rate at which you're pulling energy out of the vacuum. Simple. So what's happening with the orbs in the MH370 videos? They're using a laser, a negative energy laser, to pull energy out of the vacuum instead of adding energy to the vacuum. If the laser that was in front of them was white hot, I would say they're adding energy to the vacuum, and then that's allowing them to go forward. But instead, it's like the opposite. It's pulling energy out of the vacuum, causing this collapse. Pretty interesting. Now back to the sauce. So the way that Sal describes that effect is he says that this is like saying that the vacuum itself has undergone macroscopic quantum coherence around the craft. So as such, the craft is suctioned into the vacuum. So what Sal's saying here is that you are essentially combining the craft with space-time. What? You're combining the craft with space-time? Well, that's what macroscopic quantum coherence means. When something becomes macroscopically quantum coherent, it's combined. It's become a shape. So you've created a situation where the craft is coupled to space-time itself. The craft is coupled to space-time. And then it says that everything, according to quantum mechanics, everything can be described as waves, including physical objects. So everything is waves, including physical objects are waves. And this is where Sal says we can retard, we can delay the decoherence. So we can set up a situation where we can maintain coherence long enough for an object to teleport. So it's not good enough to just say, okay, I'm going to couple my spacecraft to the quantum vacuum. Because theoretically what should happen is that coherence should break apart like immediately. Immediately. What Sal's saying here is we can cause a macroscopic object like my mug to undergo quantum coherence with the vacuum, at which point it can be anywhere. And we can keep that coherence in place long enough for the object to go from over here to over here. And how long is long enough? We only need a fraction of a second. We saw from the MH370 videos, if you can keep that coherence for just 0.2 seconds, that's long enough to teleport an object anywhere. That's the beauty of time, right? When you manipulate time, we only need a fraction of a second. Practically no time at all. Wild. This thing, man, this thing was... and I probably got to speed up through this if we're going to get through this tonight, but here we go. This was great read. I'll try to get you guys a link to it. I'll upload it somewhere where you guys can find it. So this might be the secret to achieving quantum coherence and then allow mass reduction. Now, Ilya Prigogine. Sal mentions Prigogine a lot. Why? Because Prigogine was the one that studied non-equilibrium states. And then Sal says that Prigogine teaches us that we can achieve these quantum coherent states, these self-organizing states, but only under 3 conditions. 3 conditions are required. You ready? Number 1, we need a highly nonlinear medium, which is space-time, reality. Why is our space-time highly nonlinear? Well, look at all the energy that's sitting outside of the ether. Look at all the matter that's sitting outside of the ether. We are proof that we're in a non-linear medium. We also need an abrupt departure from thermodynamic equilibrium. So this is where we need those, we need accelerated spin or vibration. This is where we need frequency. This is where we need Tesla. And then the last requirement is we need extremely powerful electromagnetic fields. So we need to resonate with the 0-point energy, and we need extremely powerful electromagnetic fields. Good news, we have all three of those. And if we do that, then we can achieve quantum coherence, inertial mass reduction, and teleportation, potentially. Now, he shows here that there was this experiment that shows that he believes mass reduction. This is a different experiment than Patklinov and Ning Li. But he also says that perhaps the reason why the gyro saw this experimental mass reduction is because it had an electric charge. Maybe the gyroscope had an electric charge. And what Sal's saying here is that the reason why they saw anomalous mass reduction, the gyroscope was electrically charged. So when they spun it, when they increased the accelerated spin or vibration of the gyroscope, it started interacting with the 0-point energy field. That's what Sal is saying there with respect to that experiment. So then he proposes another experiment that we could for people to test out to basically confirm this idea that there's this ether, that we're interacting with it. And then he mentions here how it's very easy to imagine how using this technology, someone could create a hybrid craft that can float through water, air, space, no problem. So this is your head nod to the UFO community. But notice this. This hybrid craft would move through great ease through air, space, and water by being enclosed in a vacuum plasma bubble. Let's go, chat. What is the connection? What is the name of this stream? The connection between Salvador Pais's patents and plasma. There it is right there. The entire basis for all of Sal's patents, including his transmedium craft, is enclosing it in a bubble of plasma. Enclosing it in a bubble of plasma. Why? Because the plasma is what's breaking down that space-time interaction. The plasma is what's doing it. The plasma is the tool. When people ask, how do we achieve the voltages? How do we make this happen? The plasma is the answer to all of it. How did I figure this out independently without reading this a long time ago? Was Paul Siz, when he explained that hypersonic planes, spy planes, they use plasma sheaths. Why do hypersonic planes use plasma sheaths? I already told you. It reduces the inertia. If you reduce the inertia, you're reducing the resistance. Therefore, now your conventional craft, which before would have ripped to shreds from the resistance, can now safely travel. Plasma was always the answer. Plasma is the way that we are going to achieve warp drive. No question, no doubt. We don't need any metamaterials to do it. Although metamaterials will certainly help. When we get metamaterials, we'll be able to do anything we want to do. We will be able to produce Star Trek replicators. That's how crazy it's going to get. Thank you, Tommy Bird. Damn, Chad, this stream is cooking tonight. This stream is cooking. So there's an image of it, right? And so what you can see Sal saying here is that the plasma is going to be on the cavity on the outside of the craft. And why? Because then the inside of the craft is safe. So when we see the MH370 video zap away the plane is safe. Why is the plane safe in this video? Well, just look at Sal's patent. Sal is saying that the plasma is on the outer edges of the craft. Why? So that if you're on the inside of the craft, you're fine. Someone took the same concept as Sal's patent here, and they realized you don't need to create a cavity around the craft. In fact, the craft can be anything. The craft can be a Boeing 777. And you can create your plasma floating around it freely, and you can make this plane fly away at super speeds. That's the super secret of these videos. Everyone out there, even Salvador Pais, is like, oh, we've got to make a triangle UFO and then put a plasma, in the edge around it. And someone in the U.S. Navy figured out a long time ago, no. Just take 3 plasma orbs, have them go around the plane in an equilateral triangle, and then just converge. It'll do the exact same thing. Impressive. I got to give whoever invented this stuff a lot of credit, man. This shit is crazy. And the engineering on display in those videos is just straight up next level. Even understanding all of this, you're like, just to make those orbs, put those orbs all together, like that's an engineering marvel up there with like, I don't even know, something amazing, like making rockets go to the moon or something, Okay. It is possible to design a craft which, by delivering vast amounts of electromagnetic energy in its close proximity, can alter the space-time density in that locality. You don't need a PhD to understand what that means, chat. We just said it. Manipulate the energy density, and you can change gravity. You can cause vacuum breakdown effects, which result in inertial mass reduction. And then he just says the same thing again here, the Salvador Pais effect. Controlled motion of electrically charged matter under accelerated vibration and or accelerated spin and subject to rapid acceleration and deceleration transients can be used in conjunction with nested electromagnetic fields, fields within fields, fractal fields, if you want to think of it like that, and the enablement of the Gerenstein effect. I told you I was going to butcher that name one more time today. There it is. In order to manipulate and modify gravitational fields. So what Sal is saying here is that we can use controlled electrically charged matter with powerful voltage, tens of thousands of volts, if not hundreds of thousands of volts. And this will enable the Gerenstein effect, which causes the magnetic and electric fields to become scalar, to become gravitational in nature. I wish this effect was just written out, because when you read this effect as like gravity and electromagnetism being connected and that one can change to the other, it's like, whoa, holy shit. How's that not been discussed more? So there you go. And then it also says, or you could use this for novel methods of plasma confinement. So, of course, you can create fusion out of this. Why? Because you're creating a gravity cavitation effect. You're creating a situation where space is all just coming together naturally, where every point comes together. You're creating a singularity. You're creating a tiny black hole. Oh, Wyana Riders, thank you very much. Good context tonight. Alex Jones on Tucker today, but I'm here catching up. Thank you very much, Wyana Rider. Appreciate that. Yes, and I just lost my other train of thought. Oh, yes, I was watching a lot of the videos about, I think it's Donald E. Scott, Electric Universe on plasma, and I actually got a lot of insights from that as well, so thank you for sending me some of that content. Electric Universe is like not quite accurate, but it's probably more accurate than everybody else. Now, this slide is also interesting, superconductivity. So what it says here is the key to room temperature superconductivity is the enablement of local macroscopic quantum coherence, namely the ability of a macroscopic object to act as though if it was quantum mechanical in nature, exhibiting such phenomena as superposition, entanglement, and tunneling. So this is really interesting. This is Sal saying that really superconductivity at high temperatures has to do with quantum coherence. It has to do with quantum coherence. So if you can create your system and make it quantum coherent, it doesn't matter what temperature it is. Wow. Why is that big? Because just a second ago, I was saying through the Pais effect, we can create quantum coherence at the macroscopic level. So what Sal is saying is that if you start messing around with this technology, superconductivity comes along with it. Superconductivity comes along with it just via the quantum nature of superconductivity in general. Wow. But then he takes it a step further. He actually explains exactly why. Exactly why. I'm going to skip through this a little bit just for the sake of time, and I'm going to explain it to you. Okay. What he says is that if I have a wire that is carrying current and my electron is going through this wire, it will normally bump into stuff. It'll bump into an ion, and that will release heat, and that heat creates inefficiency. So what Sal says is the answer to this problem, the inefficient conductivity of a wire, is to make the wire vibrate. Make the wire vibrate really, really, really fast. If you make the wire vibrate really, really, really fast, the vibrational energy of the wire overtakes the energy of the electron. And what this causes is your quantum coherence effect, where the electron will just seemingly pass right through the ions with no resistance whatsoever. Wow. Holy shit. What a beautiful notion. That the answer is just vibrate your lattice structure. Vibrate the thing the electrons are going through so fast that the electron can't even tell where the ion is. That make the ions vibrate so fast that the movement of the electron by comparison is relatively minor. The energy level of the vibration is so much higher than that of the electron that it just overtakes it and it causes superconductivity. This is fucking wild. It wouldn't surprise me if this is classified. It actually wouldn't surprise me if what I just told you is classified and that it's just out there in the public. No one even understands this. It seems so simple. Conceptually, it seems so simple. Like you imagine like just vibrating your hand like really, really fast and then trying to like pass something through it. The faster you vibrate, the easier it will be to pass something through it without touching it. And it'll look like you're just cheating. It'll look like, how did that go through that, right? How did that happen? It's quantum effect. It's a quantum effect. And then he says, this is why this wire configuration could be deemed unconventional superconductor because it's achieving superconductivity in a way that is not considered conventional as well. I think there's an aspect of pulsing the current as well to this. I could be wrong. I think he gives an example. So right here in the last paragraph, it mentions as well. Am I sharing? Yeah. It can be observed that the critical value of temperature for superconductivity, so the level at which superconductivity can be achieved, can be directly proportional to the square of the vibrational frequency. So what this says is that for high temperature superconductivity, you just need to accelerate the vibration of the wire. Right there, plain English, right there on the last paragraph you see right there. This is why I wonder, how is it that people like Eric Weinstein and these other guys, how is nobody else figuring this out? Like, I can understand this. This doesn't take a PhD to understand what he's saying right here. That's clear as day right there. Vibrating the wire fast enough and you achieve superconductivity. I don't need math or equations to understand what he's saying. Either that's true or it's not. Right? Is that true? Now, you have to vibrate at pretty high rates, but still, It's a pretty novel explanation. For the people that are wondering about metamaterials, here is your answer. Anywhere where you see these mu and epsilon 0 signs, these are your electric and magnetic permeability and permittivity of the vacuum. And these can be changed. And this is what changes the speed of light. And this is where metamaterials come into play. We can polarize the vacuum, like Sal's saying, and it will change the refractive index of the medium. It will change epsilon and mu. The other way to do that is create a metamaterial that has the values of epsilon and mu that you're looking for. So, yes, to answer the question before, of course, metamaterials can do the same thing. They're like a tool to accomplish this. But we don't need metamaterials to do it because we can achieve it through plasma. So the secret to plasma and why it's connected to the UFO phenomenon is that plasma is the natural way where we can manipulate the vacuum. The natural way. There are other ways and artificial ways to do it. But the natural way to do it is to use the plasma. Oh, and then here's where he explains the analogy that I just gave. So he says, if you use pulsed current, this is the analogy how he explains that the vibrational energy is going to overwhelm the Boltzmann temperature energy. And this is what's going to cause the electrons to achieve superconductivity. So you guys can read this on your own time if you want. But this is the conceptual, like if you want to think about it in a way that makes sense for normal people, like this is Sal's explanation where the lattice structure of the ions, and again, the ions is just like the hydrogen atom without its electron vibrating. Okay. And the reason why that's so big is that ions don't move. Imagine the ions are your roads. The ions don't move normally. So what Sal's saying is we're going to force the ions to move. How do we force the ions to move? We vibrate the whole wire. Now, what would be the analogy in a plasma? A plasma doesn't have any wires, right? There's no wires in the plasma. So if there's no wires in the plasma, how do we vibrate? Kind of gave it away. How do we vibrate our wire? Well, for the plasma, we can squeeze it. We don't need to vibrate it. We squeeze our plasma. Squeeze the plasma really fast. And you're doing the same thing, right? You're moving the ions. You're vibrating the ions really quickly, moving them around. So theoretically, I feel like oscillations, squeezing effects, or any oscillation could do what we need to do to cause superconductivity in a plasma, assuming you've got it non-equilibrium and it's creating a current through your plasma. Then squeeze the wires or vibrate the wires, achieve superconductivity. Seems fun, right? Guys, we are learning a shitload of stuff today. This might be the best breakdown of the science all just together that we've done so far. Okay, and so here are the patents, guys. So extremely high electromagnetic flux. This is going to be your high energy electromagnetic field generator. There it is. We've got the other patent here for high temperature superconductivity as well. The other patents that aren't mentioned here are the plasma compression fusion device using these same mechanisms. If you can pull the energy out of space-time, you can contract everything into that region. That's why Sal has a patent. And then we also have high frequency gravitational waves, which is probably the negative energy laser. And then we also have the transmedium craft, or inertial mass reduction for a transmedium craft. So when you add up all of these patents, you get a plasma-based craft that the plasma is breaking down space-time changing the permittivity and permeability of spacetime, changing the refractive index and the properties of the spacetime. And that's what allows us to have what we would call gravity propulsion. So, final thought. Never call it anti-gravity. It's not anti-gravity. What you're doing is you're changing the properties of space-time to create a conveyor belt by which you just naturally are moving on that conveyor belt, even though your feet are not actually moving. That's gravity manipulation. That's endothermic propulsion. Changing the energy density of space-time to cause a pressure difference. If I have more energy over here than I have over here, there's going to be a pressure difference, and then you're going to have a flow, a force, one way or the other. That's all that it is, chat. That's all that Miguel Alcubierre's warp drive is. Change the energy density. In Miguel Alcubierre's warp drive, he has a negative energy in front and a positive energy behind. You don't need both. One or the other will get it done. But both makes it even better. Because if you do both, then it's going to perpetually chase each other forever. And that actually just made me think about something else related to how they're stopping the plane, which we'll talk about on another stream. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Let's hit up a couple of the last super chats that we got in here. Hatham Fostock. That's a good name. Thank you for your $5 super chat donation. I appreciate you very much, good sir. And S.E. Gittins. You are an amazing teacher. Thank you for your dedication. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much for that donation as well. Guys, I love doing this, and I love talking about the science, which is why it hurts my feelings that on Friday, we're going to talk about UFO stuff. Oh, chat. Dark Ashton might even make an appearance. We're going to talk about the new Tic Tac video on Friday. We're going to talk about the Skywatcher people on Friday. Oh, we're getting back into the UFO stuff on Friday, chat. We'll probably talk about a little bit of science too, but I want to address the new videos that are coming out, the new UFO videos. I want to talk about that stuff with everybody out there, give my impressions and thoughts. So we're going to do that on Friday, guys. And then we'll probably, we'll do something fun since it'll be Friday. So have a great night, MH370X. Thank you very much, everybody who is following and watching tonight on Pilled and on Rumble specifically. Sorry to all my X people. We're not streaming there for now. You guys got to check us out on one of these other channels. Thank you very much, guys. Follow the content. Let's chat on Friday. Peace out, everybody.
Infrared eyes, scanning the black, tracking the heat, never turning back. Control 22, a covert gaze. Control 33, in the cosmic maze. Controls in the mix, secrets untold. Silent watchers, brave and bold. In the shadows, they silently glide, protecting our interests, far and wide. As Spears, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared sight, alerting us to threats afar, guiding our defenses like a guiding star. In the silence of space, they keep their post, shields unseen yet feared the most. With precision and speed, they warn of danger, keeping us safe from the missile's anger. As Beers, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared sight, alerting us to threats afar, guiding our defenses like a guiding star. Controls in the mix, secrets untold, silent watchers, brave and bold. In the shadows, they silently glide, protecting our interests, far and wide. As Beers, sentinel of the night, watching over with infrared sight, alerting us to threats afar, guiding our defenses like a guiding star. As Beers, sentinel of